Thank you so much, Dean. I have to first say that I'm Kashesia, not Kashesha. Kashesha urinates, but Kashesia makes people laugh. Yes, so, and it's my father's name just in case we murder it here and he gets upset.
My apologies. Pronouncing it is hard.
It's all right. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to look at Scovia's book. And I made a few comments which I sent, and I think the typos, I will hand over the book for her to peruse through, because there are quite a few typos which she could work on. Scovia, thank you so much for this work. I think it's very pertinent, not only in healthcare in general, but in the recent past, where we even have a reproductive health guideline refused to be used because of the issue on adolescents and young people's contraception. I would say that what you presented today is much better than this book, because some of the questions I had, I kept ticking off, so we won't go through them. Specifically, I was very happy about the recommendations. Yeah, because here they were nicely arranged and put for target audiences. So I believe you will now lift them to make a better book. A few questions, and one of them was a clarification. If you say that there are successes of PMTCT created this population we are dealing with, my understanding was that PMTCT is a prevention of mother-to-child transmission. So it's rather the care, the child care, that brought this population rather than the prevention. The prevention would not be having this if it was 100% seamless. Yeah, so I thought the PMTCT bit would come out and you have only the child care, the good child care. I think I would like to say that it was quite difficult for me to see the identification of perinatally acquired transmission. And maybe you'll make a comment on how the stigma of sex and HIV acquisition could make these non-perinatally acquired HIV positive adolescents want to associate with or say that they acquired it from the parents. Because you rightfully said it was not difficult to get the mother's HIV status. So 16 years sexually active, now I find I'm HIV positive. Is it possible that I would want to identify with those perinatally acquired? That will be a small comment you would want to make, and maybe it could come into your limitations. I was very uncomfortable, like the opponent, about sex and pregnancy. We know in this era there are lots of sexual orientations which may not necessarily lead to pregnancy. And I thought you would make a comment on that. The different types of sexual acts we adolescents have, we adolescents, which may not necessarily lead to pregnancy. And now sex, then ART, and you are worried of transmission. You know what we are saying recently, that if my viral load is down, I don't quite transmit. I would like you to make a comment on that, to say that our recommendation should be looking at sexual behavior, not looking at these people getting on art. And you talked of having many adolescents not on art. I want you to make a comment on that. Also, you talked of peer influence, which was on the positive side, where they were able to use contraceptives because a peer was using contraception. In your inquiry, did you meet the negative influence, which is often why adolescents and even the older people do not use contraception. Please make a comment on that. And I think I will end with your study justification. You had two in the book and I didn't understand why. One was study justification, another one was justification of the study. And I don't know how those are different. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Dr. Beza, for those comments, and I hope I've captured all of them. In case I've left one, you can remind me. The typos we shall address, and I agree with you that this is a success due to HIV pediatric care. So identification of perinatal HIV infection. So this is one of the limitations that I mentioned. Yes, we were looking at perinatal HIV infected adolescents, but the Ministry of Health does not capture them like that. They will only capture less than 15 and above 15. So we looked at this, and like I mentioned in the presentation, is that we used a proxy to ascertain, but this is still to ascertain that these people acquired HIV perinatally by looking at the age that they started at. And in our population, this mean age was around 6, and I think I alluded to that in paper 1. But still, I cannot certainly say that all of them were perinatally infected, and that is one of the limitations. But generally, looking at a population starting at 6, the indication, I mean, the chance of this adolescent having acquired at is almost at 90%. Then sex, you talked about sex and pregnancy. Yes, we did not talk about, in this study we didn't look at other sexual orientation because our study looked at heterosexual kind of relationship which lead to pregnancy, and because for the other one would not lead to the consequence of what? Of pregnancy. However, it could lead to other STIs, and probably we could look at it at a later age, at a later time in other studies. But this one specifically, and we in the paper 1 we said we specifically looked at heterosexual relationship. But I'm aware that adolescents are engaging in other sexual practices, and their orientations are totally different. The issue to do with viral load, that yes, it is true, and research has shown that when someone has a viral load that is low, they will not transmit. But I'm going to share, which is not part of the study, it is part of what I experienced. And this also answers the negative part of the peer. One of the adolescents who was in this study was a peer. She was about 18, 19, and she had learned that when you have a viral load of low, which is low, you will not transmit. So when we were having an interaction, and unfortunately one of my colleagues has gone because we were with her, we saw this adolescent acknowledged that she has learned that when you have a low viral load, you don't transmit. And you know what she did? She had 2 boyfriends, and she was having unprotected sex, and she wanted to find out if whatever the providers were providing was true. So and this is an experience that we talked about. So she was testing her hypothesis, probably I could say like that. But during the interview, we did not go into that. But after the interview, we engaged what would happen. So talking about the negative peer influence, that could have been one of them. But also we know that this particular population, the adolescents, we are finding a huge problem to do with adherence. So yes, they might be on ART. Like I've said, I've had a privilege since July to be attached to Baylor. And we ran a clinic on Friday where we only deal with non-adherence. So being on treatment, the moment the adolescents feel good, most of them will throw their pills out because they are thinking that they look nice, they don't want to be associated by taking pills, and yes, then the viral load will go up. So the viral load with this special group is going to to differ. And what I didn't mention is that majority of my adolescents actually were on art, about more than 80%, and I think it is represented in the book. So we had a population of about 15 who are not yet on art. And about the justification 1 and 2, I think it was in error, and we shall correct that. Thank you.